Let's get started. Welcome to the fourth meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Tourism, Small Business, and Information Technology for the 2020 Interim. I'm going to ask Sasha to call the roll. I ask each member when they answer the roll to indicate in the response whether they are here in my Frankfurt office or here remotely. Also, after you've answered, please remute yourself. We've had a lot of people over talking. I've heard in some committees. Sasha, please call the roll.
Senator Gardler.
Sasha.
Senator Carr. Senator McDaniel.
Present in the 23rd District.
Thank you. Senator Mills. Senator Southworth.
Here in the room.
Senator Storm.
Present remotely.
Thank you. Senator Thomas. Senator Wheeler.
Present in the room.
Senator Wilson.
Present in the room.
Senator Yates.
Present remotely.
Thank you. Representative Baker.
In person.
Representative Beckler.
In the room.
Representative Bojanowski. Representative Branscombe.
Present in the room.
Representative Brown.
Present in the room.
Representative Callaway.
Present in the room.
Representative Donahue.
Yes, ma'am. Present.
Representative Dotson.
Present in the room.
Representative Pfister.
Present in the room.
Representative Frazier.
Present from District 81.
Thank you. Representative Freeland.
Present in the room.
Representative Fugit.
Present in the room.
Representative Gooch. Representative Hale.
Present here in the room.
Representative Heath.
Present remotely.
Thank you. Representative Huff.
Present in the room.
Representative Kirk McCormick.
Present in the room.
Representative Koenig. Representative Lawrence.
Present remotely in my district.
Thank you. Representative Miller. Representative Palumbo.
Here in my annex office.
Thank you. Representative Raymond. Representative Reed.
Here in the room.
Representative Roberts.
Present remotely.
Thank you. Representative Rowland. Representative Sheldon.
Present from my district.
Thank you. Representative Stevenson.
Present in the room.
Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Present in the room.
Representative Timoney. Representative Wesley.
Present in the room.
Representative White.
Present in my district.
Thank you. Co-Chair Schroeder.
Present remotely in district.
Thank you. Co-Chair King.
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Pratt.
Present room. And also, I think congratulations go out to Mr. Schroeder. He and his wife just had a new baby, so congratulations, sir. We miss you, but also understand you've got your priorities in the right place. For those of you,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome, sir. For those of you who participate remotely, our committee staff is monitoring the chat function in the Zoom application. If you have a question or want to make a comment, please indicate in the chat box you would like to ask a question or make a comment. You can also let staff know that you are present in the chat box if we didn't get you during the roll call. If you're participating remotely, please keep your microphone muted unless you're speaking. Meeting materials are available on the committee page on the LRC website. A link to the materials was previously provided to all members. At this point in time, we're going to get started. Our first presenters. I'm sorry about that. We need a motion and a second for approve the minutes from the previous meeting. Is there a second? Everyone in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. All right. Thank you, guys. We're ready to start now. Our first presenter, if you approach the table, is the Epilepsy Foundation. Please introduce yourself for the record and start your presentation. Turn your mics on and introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, co-chairs and members of this committee, for allowing us to testify today. My name is Cindy Crunk from Georgetown, Kentucky. My reason for testifying today is the need for creating an equal opportunity to feel safe in workplaces, not only for my 19-year-old daughter, Lindsay, but all Kentuckians battling epilepsy. If the name Lindsay Crunk sounds familiar, in 2018, House Bill 147, also known as the Lindsay Crunk Act, made history as the first in the country to pass the Seizure Safe Schools Act, requiring teachers to be trained in seizure first aid, seizure action plans for students with epilepsy as well. I will start with a letter I wrote to myself 7 years ago after Lindsay's diagnosis of juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. 0 family history, 0 brain injury. Just out of nowhere, she had epilepsy. To the mom I used to be before E. If I had only known what you go through 24/7, minute by minute, second by second. If I had only known being able to take your child to a sleepover without fear or letting them sleep alone in their own bed. If I had only known that being afraid of being alone with them, checking on them every minute awake or while sleeping, never did I imagine it could be this way. If I had only known the dreams of your child being like their other friends, not being excluded. If I had only known a simple shower could seem like their biggest enemy. If I had only known how you try to calm their fears to no avail. If I had only known how their self-esteem is chipped away and you do everything in your power to restore it. If I had only known how they are afraid to go to school, missing their friends, missing out on life. If I had only known that when they go to school, that they would have to endure becoming a victim of bullying. If I had only known the side effects of medication that is supposed to help them feel better, make them feel worse. If I had only known that something being dropped on the floor could send me into a frenzy. If I had only known that being seizure-free doesn't mean that you are free from epilepsy. If I had only known how much I miss those carefree days of just the normal worries a mom has. If I had only known the stigma along with E is unimaginable. If I had only known I'm sorry that so many, including myself, were never informed, not enough awareness or funding for E. I know now, and I am fighting for you and everyone that is affected by E. I miss you, but I want you to know that I pray that you will return sooner than later. Epilepsy has changed me, changed my whole family. Sorry.
You're fine, ma'am. Take your time.
It's given me a voice I didn't know I had, a resolve that gives me purpose. We are the lucky ones. So many families are witnessing their children seize hundreds of times a day with no relief in sight. Lindsay has been seizure-free for nearly 6 years with the help of 11 pills a day. She is not free from epilepsy. I am extremely proud of Lindsay's determination and willingness to fight for seizure-safe schools and thank Representative Hart and the legislature for making the Lindsay Crunk Act a reality for students and their families like mine. Lindsay, along with many others that graduated high school in 2020, did so in the midst of a pandemic. Through all these obstacles, she did it. Here she is, a high school graduate, entering the workforce and pursuing a modeling career. She faced job discrimination at a local business that set her up to fail from the get-go, and I didn't take this lightly. For 7 years now, every aspect of our lives have been centered on keeping Lindsay as safe as possible wherever she may be. Lindsay's life as a young woman out in the real world is here. I want her and others battling epilepsy to truly have an equal opportunity to feel safe in any environment they may be in, whether in school, the workforce, everywhere. Epilepsy has remained on the back burner for far too long. The lack of education about seizure first aid and epilepsy is one of the many reasons why the stigma still exists. As a not-so-normal mom and a concerned citizen of Kentucky, I am pleading with this committee to consider passing seizure-safe workplace legislation, giving an equal opportunity to all Kentuckians battling epilepsy to feel safe in pursuing a job so they can become financially independent and lead a productive life. COVID-19 has changed our lives, no doubt. Small businesses in Kentucky have suffered greatly. Our communities have tried their best to support and rally around them. But in a world with COVID-19, epilepsy will remain until we educate to eradicate the stigma. This will be life-changing for the epilepsy community. This will change the landscape of epilepsy even more. Support for seizure first aid signage will save lives and at zero cost to businesses. This sign not only offers hope, it will save lives. Thank you. Introduce yourself.
Thank you, co-chairs and members of the committee. My name is Lindsay Crunk. Today I'm here to talk to you about something very important to me. And to be very honest, as an employee myself, I'm always scared to go to work knowing that they may not know what to do. What if I were to have a seizure and nobody knew what to do? Would they know to stay with me? Would they know to keep me safe? And would they know to put me on my side? House Bill 147, also known as the Lindsay Crunk Act, changed how I felt when going to school, and hopefully others too. Nobody should ever have to live with that fear of the unknown when going somewhere. They should know that they are in safe hands. Please consider passing seizure-safe workplace legislation, giving me and all Kentuckians battling epilepsy an equal opportunity to feel safe. Thank you.
Thank you, members of the committee. Chairman Pratt and the other co-committee chairs, my name is Deb McGrath, and I am the Executive Director and co-founder of the Epilepsy Foundation of Kentuckiana. And I applaud Lindsay and Cindy for being here today to share their story on epilepsy. And I appreciate your attention and your willingness to support not only them, but so many other families that are affected. I know that because my family was affected many years ago, and I know the issues associated with epilepsy. So thank you so much for allowing us to present to you today on seizure-safe workplaces. Have you ever seen someone have a seizure? Yeah. Did you know what to do to provide seizure first aid to them? So many don't, and that's why this legislation is so important. Many, if not all of you, have been trained in CPR because it's important to know how to properly attend to someone having a heart event. Would you be shocked to know that more people have seizures in public than heart attacks? Don't take my word for this. Representative Hart shared during our meeting to discuss seizure-safe workplaces that while working as an EMT, he made more seizure runs than cardiac runs. This didn't surprise me because about 1 in 10 individuals, children and adults, will experience a seizure, and 1 in 26 Kentuckians will develop epilepsy within their lifetime. The fact is, any one of us can have a seizure at any time and at any place. This is because everyone has a seizure threshold. You and I may be vulnerable to having a seizure for a number of reasons. Seizures do not discriminate. They can happen at any time, any place, to anyone at any age. In contrast, not everyone with a heart condition is prone to a cardiac arrest. However, more attention is placed on heart events than seizures. Not to mention, there are so many stigmas and misperceptions associated with epilepsy. One reason, as Cindy pointed out, the lack of education of the general public and not knowing what to do for the person having the seizure. When most people think of epilepsy, they think of a grand mal seizure, also known as a generalized tonic-clonic seizure. However, this is only one type of epilepsy. There are many different types and many kinds of seizures associated with this neurological condition. A report conducted by the Epilepsy Foundation of America states that the leading non-medical problem confronting people with epilepsy is the discrimination in education, employment, and social acceptance. Therefore, having seizure first aid posters in the workplace is so vitally important and a very simple act to implement. We were grateful when Kentucky's legislature passed the landmark legislation of Seizure Smart Schools. Kentucky was the first state to pass this legislation. Since then, we have educated, the Epilepsy Foundation of Kentucky, and have educated over 65,000 teachers, counselors, and principals, because you all helped ensure the safety of students like Lindsay. And because of that, 11 states have since followed in Kentucky's footsteps and passed their own seizure smart legislation. For adults with epilepsy in the workforce, including graduated students who have been supported by Seizure Smart Schools, the Seizure First Aid poster will be a visual to aid their employer and other employees in knowing what to do in the event of a seizure in their workplace. Whether they themselves be the employer, an employee, a customer, young or old, a resident, or whatever the case might be, everyone in a place of business, large or small, should be made aware of how to properly respond to a seizure. And hanging a seizure first aid poster is as simple as it gets. The only cost to Kentucky businesses would be to print off the seizure first aid poster that you see. It's an 8x10 poster, and it will be hung with other state and federal labor law posters. The poster is on the screen in front of you and in your folder. How can anyone be opposed to something this simple? Lindsay and every Kentuckian with epilepsy deserves to know that their employer cares enough for them to know how and what to do if they were to have a seizure while on the job, or a customer in their place of business, or in a facility. Wouldn't you want this for yourself or a loved one? Lindsay and Cindy have bravely shared their epilepsy journey. They are just one of thousands of working families who are dealing with epilepsy and the consequences of seizures in Kentucky. I urge you to once again support Lindsay by saying yes to seizure-safe workplaces, just as you did for Seizure Smart Schools, which, was named after her. And here she is again, advocating not only for herself, but also for so many individuals that are in the workplace. Thank you again for your time and attention to our request for seizure-safe workplaces in Kentucky. And I want to thank Representative Hart for giving us this opportunity to be here today. And he and Representative Pratt championed the Seizure Smart School legislation in 2018. And I do truly hope that, along with every one of you, that we can do that again in 2022 to help protect individuals with epilepsy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony today. We do have a question. Co-Chair King, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for presenters for being here today. Yes, epilepsy does directly affect my family. I haven't had the opportunity yet to go through your brochure and your information. I was wondering if your education piece and your notification poster, do they differentiate between petit mal and grand mal? My family member suffers with petit mal, and I know that's different than grand mal. So I just didn't know if your approach would help educate on what she suffers with.
Well, they would actually, because on number 1, it says stay with the person until they are awake and alert after the seizure. So you want to time the seizure, you want to remain calm, and you want to check for a medical ID. So for individuals that are having petit mal, or what are also called absent seizures, is many times the seizure is very brief and there's no first aid that needs to be administered during that type of seizure. However, for a generalized tonic-clonic or a grand mal seizure, there would be seizure first aid that would be appropriate to administer, and that would be number 3, turn the person on their side, stay with them until they are awake, call 911, especially if it's a first-time seizure. you know, if you're in the workplace and, you know, individuals with epilepsy are protected under the ADA, so they do not have to inform their employer that they have epilepsy. We encourage them, once they begin their employment, to inform their employer just in case. But wherever they might be, you know, this is just a simple protocol to follow in the event a seizure might happen. And again, Representative King, there are many different seizure types and syndromes associated with epilepsy. So thank you for sharing your personal connection.
Absolutely.
I appreciate that.
Well, and thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm glad to know this poster would affect someone suffering with petit mal
Yes.
seizures. Thank you.
Yeah.
Our next question comes from Senator Southworth.
Thank you. Yeah, I was kind of wondering about the poster because I think unless I was more familiar with it, the vast majority of people maybe don't know what they're seeing when they're seeing someone having a seizure.
Correct.
And is that because I was looking through the Safe Schools Act and there was, or not Safe Schools, whatever it was
Seizure
called.
Smart Schools.
There you go.
Mhm.
And so it looked like there was some training for staff and so forth, and workplaces are a little different. And
Correct.
what I heard you say was, we're going to put this poster up, but I feel like there's a step 0 before this, which is how to know what a seizure looks like. Is there going to be any kind of training, or is that already in some OSHA training out there somewhere already?
Well, thank you very much, Senator Southworth, for asking that, because yes, the Epilepsy Foundation does offer. We provide it's a certification training on seizure first aid and seizures in itself, just general seizure first aid knowledge and how to administer first aid to some of the different types of more known types of seizures. So we do that through the National Epilepsy Foundation. We offer that twice a month on a training. The National Epilepsy Foundation offers it also multiple times. We promote that through our newsletters that is in your folder, and also through our social media outreach. And we are here to be a support service for the general public and individuals with epilepsy. So we would welcome anybody to take the training program, because it is vital in knowing how to identify, first of all, what several epileptic seizures look like, and then also what to do in the event you might see someone have a seizure.
So, as a follow-up, is there going to be anything for, I'm just trying to think, if you're, Lindsay blows into the new job and maybe she is more on top of things, maybe, inform somebody, but maybe not every single coworker knows, or something happens, right? Somebody else doesn't know, and they're also 19 and they've never seen this before, and they have no idea what they're even seeing, so they don't know that the poster on the wall is what they need to go refer to. Is there something, and the problem is, how do you describe, it's like symptoms of COVID, everything in the list.
Right.
Symptoms of seizures, right? But is there a way to somehow get a short list of, if you see someone spacing out, eyes rolled back, or not being responsive when they've always been, is there things we could put on the list that maybe would alert them before they know they need to hit this list?
Correct. What we can do is actually create a document that will kind of describe what the different seizure types look like, and then have it available with the poster. So that way, the business will have that along with the poster, so that way that it can be posted, together with, and then it is more explanatory as of what to look for in the event.
And I don't want to put an encyclopedia on the wall, but this is a great looking poster. I'm a designer and I like this poster.
Yes.
And I think it's a great idea. I'm just trying to figure out how to add a bar here to somehow inform, because our young people in the workforce probably don't even know what they're looking at.
Right. And then also, just keep in mind, please, that while we have 153,000 children, adults, and veterans living with epilepsy in Kentucky in Kentucky and Southern Indiana, the area that we cover, but anybody can have a seizure at any time. Does not mean to say that you'll be diagnosed with epilepsy, but 1 in 10 of us can have a seizure at any time. And so for the general public, that's, what do you do? How would you help the individual? And it's just it's providing that safety net for them. Yeah. So thank you for your support. I truly appreciate that and your comments on the poster. But yes, we can definitely put something together that would go hand in hand with the poster.
Well, and thank you, Lindsay and Mom, because my mom
Thank
had
you.
the same exact experience, freaking out about me in bed. And I was like, Mom, really? You know, she's my mom. So anyway, I can appreciate that. Thank you for your story.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Representative McCormick, you had your hand up. Do you have a question?
Well, I kind of have,
Turn your mic on, please.
I don't so much have a question, or I do. How are the public going to distinguish between an epileptic seizure and a drug overdose? We are seeing so much drug overdose in schools, colleges, in the public in general. And it would be a concern to Narcan someone who's having an epileptic seizure versus a drug overdose. Is that, are you seeing any issues with that, or?
I would not know how to respond to that because we don't work with individuals that, have experienced drug overdoses, so that's not an area of expertise that I have. I know that individuals who do, who are on drugs and who are on drugs and also use alcohol, that they can also have a seizure, just like somebody with diabetes, that they can also have a seizure if their blood sugar drops too low or goes too high. But to associate, if it's a seizure, again, I really appreciate and like what Representative Southworth said, and having some type of documentation there with it. So hopefully that would then, be helpful
To distinguish between the two
yes,
events. So,
yes.
yeah, that would be a real concern if my child was epileptic, or if I was epileptic, that if I was having a seizure,
Yeah.
And medics were called that.
And I don't know what I don't know what happens when somebody that's abusing drugs or alcohol, what happens to them if they have an overdose. I don't know if they do. I know that some can have a seizure, but I don't know if that's the majority of them. I really don't know. So, but if that is the event, the Narcan would be the proper
Absolutely.
administration. Yes,
It's just, knowing the difference.
correct.
If it's, an epileptic seizure or, something to do that's
Yes.
drug related. So
Yeah.
I just think it would be difficult for everybody generalizes now if they see an event because there is so much drug use and overdose and so forth. Not saying by any means, but it would just terrify me if my child was an epileptic, that something could in the event happen like that. So
Right.
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Hart.
Wait a second. I'll get you in line here in a second. Hold on. Representative Brown, and we'll let you reply, Mark, here in a second.
Thank you,
All right,
Mr.
thank
Chair.
Thank you for the poster. I think it makes a lot of sense. My question relates to the last item, do not. And I think from what I know, what little I know, do not restrain. And the second do not is the one that concerns me. Do not put any objects in their mouth. And rescue medications can be given if prescribed by a healthcare physician, a professional. And how would you know that? I think maybe the additional paperwork and that kind of thing that may come accompany this poster in the workplace.
Yes, yes. So, and for individuals who have expressed to their employer that they have epilepsy, that I have rescue medication on my person, and that rescue medication for an adult can be a nasal spray, or it can be also a wafer that someone can put just inside their cheek area, and it dissolves immediately, and that's to stop the seizure from continuing. Normally, you give the rescue medication 3 minutes to 5 minutes after the seizure has started if it doesn't stop on its own. So, and the seizure first aid poster itself, it's a visual to help individuals in lots of different settings. to understand what to do and what not to do, if someone were to have a seizure. So do not, that it is an old myth, it's an old wives' tale that you put something in the person's mouth that can injure them even more. And, some people have had their finger bitten and broken and because of not realizing that's not what you do. But, I remember growing up with, that's what you do if you see somebody have a seizure. You put your finger and you put your, something in their mouth, but it is an old wives' tale. So, and I think that, again, like you said, Representative Brown, having information like that, to go along with the piece that would accommodate or accompany the seizure first aid poster would be most helpful. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. And our last question or response, I guess, or question, Representative Hart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to clarify a little bit for Representative McCormick. As a paramedic, I can testify firsthand on this. Calling 911 is the most important thing that you can do off of this poster for situations that you just brought up. Your paramedics, your EMTs, your firefighters, and a lot of your policemen are trained to recognize certain criteria before they would administer either Narcan, something for a blood sugar situation, or in this case, a seizure. So the most important thing to do in regards to them types of situations and maybe not knowing what to do is to call 911 as soon as possible and get the paramedics and EMTs there, because they will know how to recognize whether it's a drug overdose, a blood sugar issue, or a seizure, and they'll be able to react appropriately. I just wanted to kind of clarify a little bit.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate everyone. Thank you guys for your testimony today. As you can tell, this is very important, very interesting and knowledgeable. Without doubt, I've learned a lot about epilepsy since we started the bill in 2018. We look forward to seeing this bill proceed in the next session. Thank you guys very much and appreciate your testimony. At this point in time,
thank you.
I'm going to ask, as they leave the table, our next presenters to come up. I think Tyler Campbell and the Telecom Association. Will you approach the desk, introduce yourself for the record, and please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Pratt, Co-Chair King, and Co-Chair Schroeder, and members of the committee for being here. As Chairman Pratt said, my name is Tyler Campbell. I am the Executive Director of the Kentucky Telecom Association. I'm here today just to briefly discuss with you some ongoing concerns that our association has had with Open Fiber Kentucky, also now known as Telecom. And I will say many of the concerns that we are expressing here today are not new. They're rather a continuation of the concerns our association members have had since the inception of the Kentucky Wired project almost 7 years ago. Last week, I submitted a letter to the committee with the permission of the chairman and committee staff outlining some of these concerns, so that material is available to you. So I will aim to be brief based on that letter, and will just provide a few additional comments here today for consideration by the committee. The Kentucky Telecom Association, for those of you that may not know, we represent Kentucky's community-based rural broadband providers. Our regular telecom members include 16 rural telecom cooperatives and small commercial companies that provide a wide range of services to our customers, which includes broadband, phone, video, wireless services, and as well as home security services. Our member companies provide broadband services to all or part of 45 counties in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, meaning we serve more than 1/3 of the counties in the state. As community-based providers, we work to serve our local community members and residents with world-class broadband and first-class customer service. I always like to say that we're the folks that sponsor the teams on the back of the Little Leagues and your local community events. And so our members take a lot of pride in what they do, how they serve their community, and they specifically take pride in the work they do for broadband as they seek to deploy future-proof fiber networks to our rural Kentucky customers. As I previously stated, the Kentucky Telecom Association has discussed our concerns with Kentucky Wired and Open Fiber Kentucky with the General Assembly in the past. Despite our concerns, we realized that through two previous administrations here in the Commonwealth, that the project was not going to be halted, and KCNA was obviously having trouble meeting some of those project milestones. Our member companies did find ways to partner with KCNA to build the state's middle mile network in many of the rural counties our member companies serve. As part of the partnership agreement to help construct fiber into these counties, companies received a right of first refusal from the Commonwealth, allowing our member companies the ability to serve those broadband customers being brought onto the state network within some of our service territories. Now, Open Fiber Kentucky, which is now also known as a Telecom, is starting to push back on this right of first refusal based on proposals that they're making in areas already served by our KTA members. The ability of a Telecom to use the Kentucky Wired network to cherry pick the easiest customers to serve has been a major concern of our association since the project was announced, and now we are seeing many of these concerns materialize with their attempts to sell internet services to key businesses in rural areas already served by our member companies. We have heard on multiple occasions here in Frankfort that a Telecom is not the state and it is not Kentucky Wired. KTA and our members feel it is important to point out to the members of the General Assembly that a Telecom, again, which is the name Open Fiber Kentucky is doing business with in Kentucky, is the wholesale arm of the original Kentucky Wired contract with Macquarie Capital and KCNA. As a Telecom continues to bid on providing last-mile broadband services, it remains a concern to our member companies that many of these projects do not fall within areas that are deemed unserved or underserved. Now, I want to make it very clear, and please understand, our member companies are not anti-competition. Our members compete with cable providers, municipal utility providers, wireless providers, and satellite providers in many of the areas we serve in Kentucky. Not only do KTA companies provide robust broadband in these lower-cost competitive areas, but our companies are also committed to providing service in some of the highest-cost areas in the state of Kentucky. Repeatedly, we and the public have been told that Kentucky Wired would not compete with our private sector internet service providers. KTA believes it is important for members of the Kentucky General Assembly to understand that a Telecom is essentially doing just that. If a Telecom continues to pursue existing large commercial and industrial customers in rural areas of the Commonwealth that our members already serve, it will remove revenue from our rural fiber networks and make it even more difficult to deploy broadband in the most high-cost areas of the state. A Telecom does not face the same type of operation and maintenance costs as other network providers in the Commonwealth because they were basically gifted their fiber network from KCNA, and this makes it advantageous to them to only serve low-cost customers with the highest profitability. The bipartisan federal infrastructure package being debated in Congress, as well as the funds from the American Rescue Plan Act that was passed earlier this year, rightly target unserved and underserved areas of the country first for expanded broadband access. KTA supports those efforts and believes this remains the best approach to close the digital divide. We maintain this should be the approach for Kentucky Wired and a Telecom. It is our hope that as the wholesale provider for a state-owned network, a Telecom will concentrate their efforts to provide broadband services to areas of the Commonwealth that remain unserved or underserved, rather than cherry-picking last-mile services in areas already served with fiber-to-the-premise networks by our member companies. As rural telecom cooperatives and small commercial providers, it remains a challenge to build out fiber networks in some of the most remote areas of the Commonwealth. KTA member companies continue to aggressively pursue federal, state, and local dollars through broadband grant programs, loan programs, as we seek to fulfill our association's mission of enhancing the lives of Kentuckians through expanded broadband access. Members of KTA, like the members of the Kentucky General Assembly, want all Kentuckians to have access to better and more reliable broadband. However, a subsidized state-owned network provider threatening to overbuild areas of the Commonwealth that are already served with fiber does nothing to further the pursuit of that goal. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'll pause. I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate, again, the opportunity to be here in front of you all. If you do have any questions at this time, I'll do my best to answer them. If I don't have an answer, I will do my best to get you those answers.
Well, we do have a question already. Senator McDaniel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Tyler, thank you for being here today. I do appreciate it. And you'll recall that, we were all told throughout the course of this project how inexpensive it would be, which clearly did not, back up to Kentucky Wired now, to turn out not to be the truth. We told that these folks would not be involved in providing last mile service and many other things. I would like you to comment specifically on the fact that Macquarie Capital recently bought Cincinnati Bell, which makes our private side vendor now the owner of one of, if not the largest, final mile networks in Northern Kentucky.
Yes, Chairman McDaniel. Again, I don't have, and again, I will say this: we represent rural broadband providers, so I'm not a lawyer, but I'm going to make a very lawyerly statement here. I cannot speak for another group in terms of what their agreements were, but as I understand it, that purchase was recently finalized, where Cincinnati Bell was purchased by Macquarie Capital, I believe, as an affiliate called Red Plant Fiber or something along those lines. So Macquarie does have assets in Northern Kentucky as a telco in Northern Kentucky.
Thank you, Tyler. And Mr. Chairman, I would just caution the members of this committee that if you think for a minute that the purchases will stop there or with any of these, or that they have any particular heartburn about pushing the rural telecom straight out of business, you're sorely mistaken. And there are not enough guardrails on this. There have never been enough guardrails on this. And if you like your rural telecom, you better start paying attention, because the intent will be that they go away. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Representative Tackett Lafferty.
Can you define for me underinsured, or I'm sorry, not underinsured?
Turn your mic on, please.
Underserved.
Yes, underserved.
Yes, ma'am. And I apologize. I did put both definitions in here,
Okay.
and that's the reference. Unserved as the federal definition right now means without 25.3. Kentucky, with its state broadband grant program that was just passed in the 2020 session and recently funded with the ARPA funds, makes a distinction. So unserved was 10.1 or less, underserved being 25.3 or less. So I apologize for any confusion. I did reference both, but that's more the Kentucky specific definitions. If you're looking for the FCC definition, it's 25 megs up, 3 down for, or I'm sorry, 25 down, 3 up for the definition of unserved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I'm sorry. Representative Beckler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tyler, I agree with your assessment about Open Fiber Kentucky and Telecom, and we have to be careful. And kind of tag teaming on to what Senator McDaniel said, I do think that we must be careful. However, there's always a however or a but, right?
Yeah.
I think the rural telecoms need to step up to the plate on meeting that unserved and underserved areas. If they don't, then I do believe that there will be more acceptance of the larger telecom companies purchasing the smaller ones. I know in my area, the big argument is, and I have great techs who have helped me out tremendously, but in my area, I am clearly underserved by both definitions, by both the federal and the state. And the carrier seems to have no desire to upgrade their system because there are so few people, they say, that will utilize it. So I think that y'all need to step up your work as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, do you care if I respond just briefly?
No, go ahead, please.
Representative Beckler, I think our members agree with you. And we are in the process of doing that on many fronts. We have members who are aggressively pursuing loans from USDA through the Rural Utility Service Program, the Reconnect program, which many of you may be familiar with. That was a part of the Farm Bill. Those appropriations are still coming down at the federal level, and so we do have members that are pursuing Community Connect grants, RUS loans and grants that will have build-out requirements associated to them that will bring hundreds of more homes, thousands of more homes in some of these rural areas up to date with fiber to the home. And so we are aggressively pursuing those. I get the frustration of many folks in rural areas because we hear those. I mean, I get a phone call quite a bit like, do you have a member in this area? I was like, well, we do have. Let me see if, I know when they can come to you or they will be coming to you. So I think our members would agree with you that we are trying to be very aggressive when it comes to federal, state, and local dollars. The ARPA funds that you all allotted for the state broadband grant program, I have members right now that are preparing. That's a quick turnaround in 2 months' time, but they are very aggressively pursuing a state grants through the state broadband grant program. And at their local level, the federal government did provide some flexibility, and I know we don't always compliment the federal government a lot, but with those ARPA funds, they did put in some flexibility for your local county judge executives, those fiscal courts, and for the municipalities in this state to have some flexibility to do programs along the lines of, as you all know, you can spend that money on wastewater, water, and broadband. And so we've had folks engaging with their county judge executives, with their mayors and the fiscal courts and their county commissions and local city commissions as well to explore options to continue build out. So I do hear where you're coming from, but I will say our members are doing their best to be very aggressive.
Mr. Chairman?
One more, yes, sir.
That's all well and good, but I think your members ought to be able to put up some of their own money and not sit back and wait for grants and funds to come from the state or the federal government or anybody. You're in business to make a profit, I understand that, but you owe when you're a monopoly, which you are in fact, you need to step up and use some of your own money to get to those areas. I won't say anything more, Mr. Chairman.
I will say, Mr. Chairman, and Representative Beckler, I'll be happy to have a sidebar with you on this as well, but most of the programs that we are pursuing do have match contributions as a part of that. So our cooperative members will be putting up some of their own capital. The commercial companies that are pursuing this, they will be putting up their own capital as part of match requirements for those. So, and I'll be happy to have a further conversation with you as a sidebar.
Thank you, sir. We have, of course, we're going to have a lot of questions on this to a point. All right, next we have Representative Sheldon.
Hello, thank you very much. I appreciate the presentation. I was just curious. It seems like no matter.
Can you speak up, Steve? I can barely hear you, sir, please.
I'm sorry. Okay, is that better? Yes. Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just wanted to comment. It seems like, no matter what these guys do to try to compete to get the business, and then we have the larger companies coming in and trying to put down some competitive prices for our consumers, and all that needs to be reflected. But it seems like this would be well suited for something you mentioned early in your presentation, and that was you thought you had a first right of refusal, after they negotiated something or put together some idea for a certain community that you thought you had a first right of refusal. Was that something they told you, or was that something contractually you thought you had?
As I understand it, there were some language put in contractually with the Commonwealth. I don't know if that extended to the contracts with the Telecom. I can't speak to that. I'm sure lawyers are going to be involved with this at some point. But contractually with the state, there was some language put in there on those areas of the state where our member companies assisted building out laterals into some of these rural communities. That right of first refusal was present. And so, but since that time, it seems like we're getting some pushback on what that actually means. And so, and this is not disparaging I know there's going to be a lot of interpretations and lawyers that will be involved probably to help us figure out those interpretations.
Okay, well, I really thank you. And I do believe that ultimately could be an answer, because if they come in and put something together, if you're able to do it for the same price and they're wholesaling it out anyway, I don't know why we wouldn't support our rural communities. So something to think about, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. All right, next we have Representative Hale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tyler, thank you for your presentation today, and appreciate what you're
what your organization is doing. In my area, where I live, is a very rural area, and surrounding 5 or 6 surrounding counties have some of the best internet service in the state. And that's because of what you folks have done working through the local co-ops there. And I appreciate that very much. And I've always complimented you on that and have been very thankful for what has happened in our rural area where I live and the co-op that serves those surrounding counties. I would just like, Mr. Chairman, just make one comment, and I totally agree with what Senator McDaniel said in his assessment of these larger companies. Certainly have, I think, motives to put your kind of people out of business if they could, and they will certainly try, I think. But again, I just want to say thank you, and I know you get a lot of complaints. We all get a lot of complaints, but I do appreciate what you do and what you all are doing, especially for the rural areas. And for one, setting up here, I want to say thank you for what you all have done for our area and serving us with excellent internet over there. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, and that's going to be our last one today is Representative Dotson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Tyler, for your commentary today. I just want to address this committee. I know that fiber is, on the forefront of everybody's mind, reaching out to these rural areas, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that there are other technologies available. I know, looking at other states and researching this a little bit, there are systems out there, such as Starlink, that you can set up a satellite, much like a dish, and get internet service out in these rural areas. And it's so expensive to run these fiber optics that, these are good alternatives that we need to really look into, rather than just spend the money to run out to areas that, as Representative Beckler mentioned, where they're not going to get serviced. So I just think it would be a good idea if we take an alternative look at other options rather than just the traditional way of doing things. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. All right. I'm going to do a little
Chairman Pratt.
on Kentucky Wired, just so everybody understands, because there's a lot of new members and faces on this have not exactly familiar. Kentucky Wired was started in the administration of Steve Beshear. It was only 5 years overdue to be delivered and $1.5 billion over budget. That was 100%, if I'm not mistaken, taxpayer dollars. That's who is the driving force of this. Now, Tyler, I'm going to recap a little bit what you said, make sure I understand this committee. Basically, what you're saying is they're going to cherry pick your best customers, which will absolutely unincentivize you to be able to go to the last mile to the unserved and underserved customers. Is that correct?
I think our concern, our big concern is remaining to your point that if they come in and again, these are areas where we already have fiber to the premise, fiber to the home. If they come in and can cherry pick those customers and take those industrial customers off our network, then that's not reoccurring revenue that our members will have. And that, unlike a lot of larger companies, we do have some small commercial companies, but we do have a lot of co-ops in our association. As well as I do if you deal with a rural electric cooperative. I mean, they serve their members first. That's who they want to serve first. So the money that we have, it goes back into our rural networks. It goes back into serving our member cooperatives and their customers within the cooperative. So if they lift off the recurring revenue, it makes it more difficult to do further build outs to your constituents. And I think I've heard this, we want those individuals served on the last road, on the last mile. And so if you take those larger recurring revenues away from our members, it's going to be very difficult to serve those folks in the outlying areas and the most remote areas of the Commonwealth. That's just a legitimate concern that I think we have.
And you have no problem with the sell around. If they want to go after someone who's unserved right now, go for it, correct?
Well, I think we've repeatedly said that if a Telecom is going to focus on areas that are unserved or underserved or areas where we're not, I think they're a CLEC company in Kentucky now, that they have that ability to do that if it's unserved or underserved. Our biggest concern is then, again, overbuilding in areas where we already have fiber, we already have those customers online. And so, again, if they take those customers and they move them off, that's going to make it very difficult for our folks to reach your constituents who keep saying we need fiber to the home, we need this in our area. And so that's one of the reasons I wanted to reiterate that here today. We've said this before. We have had ongoing conversations. I'm sure they will continue, but it is still a concern of my members long term what this means if they continue to compete and threaten to overbuild us in these areas.
I'm going to ask you a question. You can not answer if you want to, but Kentucky Infrastructure Authority, who's actually rolling out the broadband across the state right now, said in testimony, I believe it was an A&R, that they had actually put either Kentucky Wired or Telecom on their board to consult on the request for proposal for the broadband. You all cover 45 counties and 1/3 of the broadband state. Were you asked to be part of that RFP?
In terms of the RFP, we submitted comments. I know they opened comments in terms of what KIA, they did an open RFP process. In terms of the folks that evaluate that, if that's what they're doing, we weren't asked to be a part of that, but they did do an open RFP process that solicited questions from providers around the state. My members did actually submit, not all members, but we did have a handful of members that did submit questions in terms of the RFP.
And I may be corrected. The way I understood it, they actually was on the group who put the RFP together.
I don't know. Now, in terms of the RFP process, we were not a part of the RFP process. We did respond to the questions posed by the RFP.
Does that concern you? And you can say I don't want to answer that.
I don't really, in all due respect, Mr. Chairman, I really don't know how to answer that. I don't know necessarily that it concerns me other than, I don't know if there would have been other questions that other providers would have thought of that, if we were all sitting in a room together coming up with a questionnaire. But, we were able to respond to the best of our ability to the RFP as it was distributed online by KIA.
Okay. Our last question today is Senator Thomas.
Mr. Chair, I don't know if I'm going to be last after my comments because you may have some response to that. But in your comments regarding the fact that Kentucky Wired was started by Steve Beshear, I would say that when Governor Beshear, the first Governor Beshear, announced this project, it was overwhelmingly received by the state because we all recognized at that time that Kentucky, had to be a state that led in broadband and that we were really truly unserved, frankly, with regard to our broadband network across the state. I see Tyler nodding in improvement. We also have to acknowledge, Mr. Chair, that during the administration that followed the first Beshear, there were several changes that sought to be made in the Kentucky Wired network that delayed the implementation of that, and we had fits and starts during that 4-year period. Now we're here in 2021. Both the state and federal government have a renewed interest in making sure we get that last mile completed. Again, we just recognized this past session as a legislature that we need to go ahead and finish it. We appropriated $300 million to finish our broadband network, and we need to get the job done.
Again, I think the only concern here is, from mine, we've said, is the fact that taxpayers' dollars was used to build the backbone. And they told us from the word go they would not go after existing customers, and it's quite obvious they are. That's our concern. Again, and you're right, at one point in time we actually discussed many times on actually stopping the funding for Kentucky Wired, but we were so far down that rabbit hole we didn't think we'd ever get out of it. So that is a fair statement, but you're right, it's been ongoing for a long time, way too long. Again, if at this point in time, I'm going to ask the next presenter to approach the table, and we're going to...
Representative Pratt, Chairman Pratt.
Yes, sir.
This is Rick Girdler. I just got a quick suggestion or a quick question on this, because Kentucky Wired, of course, Harold Rogers was part of it too, and it's...
Lean forward. I think we can barely hear you, sir.
All right. Can you hear me better now?
Yes, sir.
All right. This is Rick Girdler. And I just had a suggestion, or hopefully maybe try to remedy some of it. Could they go to open fiber? Is that too much to ask? And give them their concerns? Tyler, could you do that and say, hey, don't be cherry picking our big customers, and come back and report to us, and then even have them to come back to make sure that we don't try to hurt them, plus the fact that we can get broadband and this to our unserved and underserved areas, because that's where we're hurting at. That would just be a suggestion. Now, maybe that's like me going to another insurance man and doing something with him, but that may be out of line, and it may not. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, do you care if I respond briefly?
No, please respond. We need to move on.
Thank you, Senator Girdler. Yes, I just want you to know I didn't just come up here and not want to say that we have had ongoing conversations with Telecom. Those conversations are still taking place. They are very aware of our concerns, but we have also had people ask us what are our concerns still, and that's why we came here to Frankfort to talk about those, to let you all know where we are in this process. But those conversations are ongoing, and they are, I believe, pretty well aware of our concerns.
Could Chairman Pratt, if I could?
Yes, sir. Very quickly, please.
Only thing if these ongoing things are going on, the conversation is, can they report back as to the success or not success of this? Because it does concern us about the unserved and underserved. But I for one, I think they ought to be, all should be trying to branch out farther into the people like Mr. Hale or some of those are talking about. Anyway, that's just a suggestion.
I'd love to have them back at a later date to tell us how things are going. And again, to be fair, I would have glad to have a Celeron or Open Fire, Kentucky Wired come and testify today if they wished. But yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, sir. We're going to ask the next group to come up. We do have some time constraint, not a lot, but let's get on with our next presenter and go from there. Please introduce yourself for the record and tell us why you're here today.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Iverson. I am the General Manager of Bowling Green Municipal Utilities in Bowling Green, Kentucky. Joining me today is Annette DuPont Ewing, our Executive Director of the Kentucky Municipal Utilities Association, and Tony Thompson, General Manager of Murray Electric System. Mr. Thompson is also Chairman of MuniNet, a middle-mile network built by and serving the telecommunication transport needs of municipal utilities in the western part of the state. Thank you, Co-Chair Schroeder, Co-Chair King, and Co-Chair Pratt, and Interim Joint Committee members for this opportunity to discuss with you our lived anxiety about the Commonwealth's direct competition with its own municipal utilities. Bowling Green Municipal Utilities, generally referred to by our initials BGMU, is a municipally owned utility, owned and operated of the city of Bowling Green, Kentucky. BGMU owns 4 distinct utility infrastructures: electric distribution, drinking water, treatment and distribution, sewer collection and treatment, and a fiber optic network. It's the last of those utilities, our fiber optic system, that will be the focus of today's conversation. BGMU has been in the telecommunication business for 2 decades. We only serve commercial, industrial, and institutional customers. Our product offerings include broadband internet, telephone, commercial point-to-point connections, VLAN, and dark fiber leasing. BGMU was one of the first cities in Kentucky to offer gigabyte service to its customers. We're also in a joint venture partnership with WKU's Research Foundation in a Tier 2 data center. We've worked hard to build a robust, solid, fiber optic-based network to support economic development in Bowling Green and Warren County. And as our community's track record shows, we've been successful at that. But BGMU is not the only municipal utility in the Commonwealth. The Kentucky Municipal Utilities Association, KMUA, has 45 member systems, 15 of which own and operate telecommunication networks. These members have been on the front edge of problem solving for their communities for quite some time. A list of the systems and their network attributes were included in your packet. In fact, the Frankfort Plant Board has been operating a network since the 1950s. Collectively, KMUA members, city utilities, have invested over $200 million in their telecommunication networks. The issue of the Commonwealth competing directly with its own political subdivisions, is as true for those member systems as it is for BGMU. For many of you, these are your constituent entities in places like Paducah and Glasgow, Barberville, Russellville, Williamstown, Frankfort, Hopkinsville, Owensboro, Murray, Franklin, Mayfield, Henderson, Bardstown, and Princeton. One more piece of information for context here. When BGMU's fiber optic network was built, it was very intentional on serving the industrial parks and the commercial corridors, as this was an economic development play. We had observed, and I suspect most, if not all of my fellow municipal managers saw it the same way, we had observed that the large telecom companies were not investing state-of-the-art infrastructure in our community. I get it. Their focus was on, and continues to be, on large marketplaces with lots of density and a quick return on investment. When we entered into this arena, T1 lines were all that were available and at a quite an expensive price. We operate our network as a quasi-open network, and let me give you an example. Bowling Green is home to the world headquarters of Fruit of the Loom. BGMU will never be in a position to offer comprehensive telecommunication services to Fruit of the Loom. We're just not international. But what we can offer, and actually do, to support Fruit of the Loom is to provide a last mile fiber optic circuits leased out to national carriers so that Fruit of the Loom has true options outside of AT&T's network. BGMU wins by leasing the local loop connection, the competitor carrier wins by being able to offer products, and Fruit of the Loom wins by having true optionality to serve its corporate needs. So how do we do this? And here's a simplified map of Bowling Green. Note the 4 industrial parks shaded in green, the healthcare segments shaded in blue, and the commercial corridors along the major thoroughfares. Now here's how our network, simplified to show just the trunk lines, is built to serve those important commercial, industrial, and institutional customers. My testimony here is not to rehash the decisions creating Kentucky Wired or the stumbles, delays, and cost overruns along that build, but rather to discuss the challenges of today. At the time of Governor Steve Beshear's engagement with the General Assembly about his administration's plans for Kentucky Wired, BGMU's fiber division manager and I were called into then Speaker Jody Richards' office. Although he didn't have enough details to share with us, it's pretty much concepts at that time, I recall him saying, "I just don't want this to harm you all," meaning obviously BGMU's fiber business. Intuitively, I think what he was giving voice to the possibility that municipal networks could, in fact, face problems with the Commonwealth's plans. Subsequent meetings with Kentucky Wired officials and KMUA members yielded similar conversations about overbuilding municipal networks and competing for our customers. At the heart of the concerns expressed was the excess capacity built into Kentucky Wired's network and the potential marketing of that excess capacity. On multiple occasions, we were told the state has no intentions to compete for your customers. But that does not appear to be true. The competition to city-owned broadband has just been outsourced. In the design of the Kentucky Wired contractual arrangements, an affiliate of Macquarie Capital, Open Fiber Kentucky, now rebranded as Telecom, was given the exclusive right to use the excess capacity of the network. Most importantly, though, in telling of the Commonwealth's motivations, is the revenue sharing stemming from marketing that excess capacity. 90% of gross revenues from core dark fiber leases, 80% of net revenues from ancillary dark fiber arrangements, and 75% of revenues from lit fiber services revert back to the Commonwealth. There's your motivation. And who are the market targets for this excess capacity? Naturally, a middle mile network such as Kentucky Wired would be marketed to internet service providers who would themselves build last mile retail networks and are critical to closing the unserved gap. I have no issue there. And if the introduction into our market of new independent internet service providers drives competition, so be it. However, ISPs are not the only target customer of Kentucky Wired and its retail partner, Telecom. Telecom marketing goes a lot more granular as to specific retail targets. Their website states that their network can connect to enterprise to medium-sized businesses. Industries of focus include agricultural, banking, data centers, hospitalities and hotels, manufacturing, medical, and private colleges. Also mentioned are community and county offices, schools, healthcare facilities, and other small business activities. Well, goodness, that pretty much describes BGMU's entire business portfolio. In addition to Fruit of the Loom, we serve both city and county government. We serve Western Kentucky University and the Bowling Green Independent Schools and part of Warren County Schools. We serve the Medical Center at Bowling Green and its dispersed footprint, and the entire network of Graves Gilbert Clinic offices. We serve hotels and banks and car dealerships and attorney offices. We serve cell towers and customers in all 4 industrial parks. But Telecom's marketing don't fully communicate the foundation of the real anxiety we've been feeling for quite some time. Remember the slide from earlier showing our network and how it's designed to serve the industrial parks, healthcare facilities, and commercial corridors. Now here's Kentucky Wired's build as they pass through Bowling Green and Warren County. You can't tell me that routing wasn't intentional. But just don't take my word for it. The other 14 managers will tell you the same answer. The routing was intentional and provides the Commonwealth's contractual partner the opportunity to snatch up our customers by marketing that excess capacity and the Commonwealth's own network. So to recap, the exclusive contractual arrangement, the Commonwealth's financial motivations in that arrangement, the target industries in the marketing materials, and the network routing and overbuild collectively create a lot of anxiety and concern from city utilities. As taxpayers, unfortunately, we're all on the hook for the cost of Kentucky Wired. And I wish for it to be successful and that wins for both of us can be found. Those might include wholesale bandwidth options to serve aggregated municipal internet traffic, recruiting ISPs into markets where connectivity is non-existent or poor, or serving via the municipal's last mile network national contracts that municipal systems may find hard to penetrate, like a Walmart, for example. To be fair, I've had conversations with sales and engineering staff from Telecom, and they've told me they don't have any intention of marketing to or taking our customers or those of other Kentucky-based telecom providers. That's encouraging, and I hope that to be true. But running a capital-intensive business cannot be based on hope, especially since the taskmaster is the state and its motivation to bring in revenues to support its own network and debt service obligations. Also butting up against that hope of not taking our customers is the request from Telecom that for pole attachment arrangements. Now, a pole attachment agreement is the legal process of implementing last mile construction to serve retail customers. And most, if not all, of the municipal systems have been asked for that arrangement. The request for an attachment arrangement anchors all the 4 points I just mentioned: the exclusive contract, the state's financial motivation, the marketing materials, and the network overbuild and routing. The attachment request was just icing on the cake. If you're not targeting our customers, and all of this is a misunderstanding or an overreaction on our part, why are you asking for a pole attachment agreement? So I want to take to heart Telecom's representations that our customers are not their target. But team members and management approaches can change. Changes in state cabinet positions and even administrations do happen. There's nothing preventing in future years a change in course, expectations, or instruction. Budget pressures and administration changes could easily yield a different policy to don't compete with cities approach that may be in play today. So my ask of you today is this: direct KCNA and its contractual partner Telecom, preferably through legislation, to leave our municipal customers alone. Don't cherry pick our best customers. Now, this isn't an anti-competition play. KMUA members all compete with either AT&T or Windstream and compete with Spectrum or some other incumbent cable operator. Additionally, in Bowling Green, we compete with Level 3, Lumen, and CenturyLink. Nor do we own our customers. They're just as free to leave us for our current competitors as they could with Telecom. It just seems wrong to me, as nonprofit city utilities, we'd be facing the Commonwealth as a competitor too. Remember, city utilities use public dollars to build internet networks to serve their small cities. And now the Commonwealth, using public dollars as well, has overbuilt those same networks and is, through its contractual agent, competing directly with those city-owned utilities. That makes zero sense from a public policy perspective, and we need your help to direct your agency and its contractual partners to leave our municipal customers alone. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions. I think
Thank
Tony
you,
may
sir.
be,
I'm sorry.
Mr. Thompson may be speaking.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. I know you're probably getting worn out with this, but I'm going to just echo some of Mark's testimony and add another perspective, and I'll be brief. My name is Tony Thompson. I serve as the general manager of Murray Electric System in Murray. 22 years ago, our city fathers asked us to go into the internet and telecommunications business because at that time we were provided with dial-up service. We really weren't looking to go into that business, but we did, and we've been successful. In 2011, the cities of Murray, Mayfield, and Paducah formed what I would term a joint action agency called Muni Net Fiber Agency. The primary purpose of that partnership was to build a fiber connection that would link us to Bowling Green, where we could get a cheaper point-of-present internet backbone. At that point in time, we were paying over $100 per megabyte for internet connectivity. By building the network ourselves, we were able to reduce the cost to less than $10 per megabyte. Since that time, the cities of Princeton, Hopkinsville, Glasgow, and Russellville have joined MuniNet. And using a loan from the Kentucky Infrastructure Authority, we built another leg of our network to Nashville to obtain another connection to another major POP. Today, we're paying less than $2 per megabyte for our internet backbone that we were paying over $100 per meg back in the year 2000. And our customers are the beneficiaries of those savings. Part of the MuniNet network that was built is now being leased to Kentucky Wired to help them complete their network. We provided this fiber out of a team player desire and trying to help Kentucky Wired with their stated intent to help bring broadband to the unserved and underserved areas of the state. We were repeatedly assured that Kentucky Wired would not compete with our member cities for our customers. Now, as you've heard, we don't feel that this is the case. I have an email with me today that specifically targets one of Murray's fiber customers with a solicitation to leave us and take service from Telecom. I don't think any of our members have a problem with Kentucky Wired helping to serve those in the state who need connectivity, but we don't need the state to come into our communities where we have made major capital investments to serve our communities when no one else would, and now try and lure our good customers away from us. I thank you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate your testimony. I think Senator Wheeler, did you ask to have a question with this? No. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. So, again, any questions? Senator Wise. Wilson.
Wilson.
I said W is pretty close for me.
Well, it's
Mark, it's always a pleasure to see you,
Senator, good to see you.
thank you for being here. Many years ago, when I was managing a radio station network, I changed from AT&T to actually have your service.
Yes, sir.
And I have to say that you guys did our telephones and you also did our internet, and I was a lot more pleased with what your service was versus AT&T at that time. And I don't know if they still use it today, but it was certainly, I remember you guys making the investment, and everything that you've shared was exactly what you put forward. It wasn't to go out to houses. Of course, I was trying to convince you of that at that time.
It's an
And
ongoing
you said
debate.
no, it was the industrial and business, and so I was very pleased to have that service. But I certainly echo what Senator McDaniel said. We have had the hardest time with Kentucky Wired, and we repeatedly have asked them about competing with our local providers, such as BGMU. And we were told that they would not be doing this. And so it really distresses me to see this happening now. So I appreciate your testimony and appreciate you coming today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Representative Sheldon.
Hello, Mark. I appreciate your presentation today. I guess I just want to cut right to it. I certainly feel the same way Senator Wilson and Senator McDaniel have spoken eloquently about the what you all do for our community there in Bowling Green. But I was probably one of the first T1 users back years ago, so I sure appreciate that. But I really want to know just if these people were just, it seems like the common theme here is that they're not going for underserved or areas or not served areas. If they focus just on underserved and not served, because no matter the debacle of Kentucky Wire and the intent, the truth is we do have people out in our underserved areas that need internet and they haven't been able to get it. So if these folks stayed in their lane and did what they said they were going to do, would you work with them then on pole attachments if you needed to? If would you be willing to work in that area?
Absolutely, yes. I don't think the city of Bowling Green per se meets the definition of an unserved or underserved area.
I was speaking more. I was speaking more for Butler County.
I understand, and if that were the case, yes, certainly, we would.
Yeah, I was speaking more for Butler County. Yeah, I know Bowling Green's got plenty, and I agree. I mean, those trunks being run right along your service line is just absolutely ridiculous, and there's no other way to say that. So there was a reason to do this, and I just think that if you guys would be willing to go in the underserved areas, we just have to get these guys focused on where they should be. And I regret that it's all turned out this way, and I sure appreciate what you all do for our community.
Thank you, sir.
Representative Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest if you haven't done this yet, in Louisville we had the issues with AT&T and about internet and about pole attachment, and so if you could do a little research what transpired up there, it didn't work out. But this is no different than what the solar panels are, and what happened, if I may say this, is big business had no interest in it because the initial small companies came in and made the initial investment and made it profitable. Okay, so if there's anything I can do to help you, don't hesitate to reach out because I'm about small business and I'm about the people that make the initial investment, about us moving forward. We need to move the state forward, yes, but I'm not into protectionism about business, things like that, but there should be common ground we can find where everybody can be profitable. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, sir. Senator Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a point of clarification. So KCNA's contract with the Celeron to market the excess bandwidth, was there not any bounds put on that in that contract? Was there not anything signed that said, underserved and focus on that? There wasn't anything of that nature?
Not that I'm aware of. I can't say that I've read the entire contract between the two.
So it's just kind of a good old boy handshake. You guys do this and
bring in some revenue.
bring in some revenue. Okay. Yeah, that needs to be corrected. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, I recap again. Much like you, what I was told when I came into office was Kentucky Wired was going to build a backbone and backbone only. They were never going to compete with anybody. They actually, again, I guess our look at this is they used taxpayers' dollars to build the backbone with extra capacity, and we were told that this extra capacity was only going to be sold to providers like yourself, not used to compete against providers like yourself, and they would not compete with it. So basically what you're seeing right now, if I'm paraphrasing, don't do it correctly, please correct me, is the fact that now they're taking this excess and they're going to cherry pick the best customers across the state, and it's not going to do anything to help get internet out to the unserved and underserved areas other than make money for a company that used public dollars to build the backbone. Is that correct?
I would say yes. As a general rule, it's certainly the way the network was designed and built creates opportunity for the cherry picking. And again, I kind of showed that. That's why the mapping was important for me to just demonstrate to you. It was really a complete overbuild of our network. And so with that, then maybe the state's can look at you the straight face and say we're not doing it, but it's just been outsourced.
I understand. Again, I'm sure someone from Celeron is watching us. I would encourage them to start working with you all in a good faith basis and say, this is what we will and won't do. We're willing to put it in writing what we will and won't do, so that we don't have to go down down the path of actually doing legislation to stop this. We also have a Representative Southworth has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Who has looked at the contract? I mean, I don't want to reinvent the wheel here, but who are the partners or the agencies or the private industry people or whatever that we can say, all right, you've read this entire contract. Exactly what are you seeing in this?
I've
never seen it.
We don't know.
It's online. It's available online.
Well, I'll just put it on my to-do list.
Yeah.
But so I have a comment, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if everybody, surely we've had a number of hearings with Kentucky Wired here before, but in my committee we had recently, a few months ago, Kentucky Wired came and presented, and their number one push was if we don't get our entirety of the extra 50%, fully sold ASAP, that is their only plan forward for funding, in addition to the additional general funds and everything else they had to support. But their business model is entirely hung on filling that to the brim. And that's not even going to pay enough. To me, it was a bad business model. But I'm just saying that's the pressure that we're under as the Commonwealth. And I mean, obviously, you've got a good point here, pitting public dollars against public dollars. But we need to be aware from the Commonwealth's perspective that the Commonwealth's stated interest is to eat up every last dime, regardless who it is. And I just want to make sure everybody's aware that's the plan, plus more general funding to pay for their staff from what we've learned this year.
It's all the things I kind of had listed in terms of creating anxiety. When my board chair received an email solicitation from Telecom for the company that she is the CFO of, saying, hey, we'd like you to come onto our network. Of course, they're my customer. That certainly got my attention.
Thank you. And our last question today is going to be Representative Fugit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not really a question for you all, but I'd like to ask Kentucky Wired a question, or Accelatron, whoever it is, that why would they go overbuild in Bowling Green when Southeast Kentucky needs all the help we can get, just trying to get it to the people that need it? If it's Kentucky Wired supposed to be for the people that need it the most, then they need to get a new sense of direction, and we can show them how to get to the mountains if they'll ask us.
Thank you, sir. And again, I think everybody in this room wants to get broadband internet to the unserved and underserved areas of Kentucky.
Yes, sir.
Problem is, what we're seeing, it appears, is that's not Celeron's intent. Their intent is cherry pick customers to try to pay for their investment again. And I hope I'm wrong. And I share your concerns, but I wish again, and I would love to have them come and say, this is what we will and what we won't do. This is our intent. Put it in writing so we will either stoke our fears or put our fears to rest. So I've been concerned because I've had this conversation about what's your intent once you get this finished, and I've been told more than once, we're only going to sell the excess capacity. We're never going to compete with private or municipalities. That's not our intent. Maybe someone misspoke. That again, people have changed there, so we just need to know their intent. And I share your concerns, and thank you guys very much for your testimony. Thank everybody for sticking in on such a long meeting. Our next meeting is sorry about that. Is October the 21st. Thank you guys for your attendance. Looking for a motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you guys.